Jake stood alone on the edge of Sector 9. His old ship creaked under his boots as he scanned the floating wreckage ahead. The war had left behind pieces of broken ships, twisted metal, and drifting cargo, but something caught his eye. Not metal, not a crate. It was round, silver, and intact. An escape pod. He moved fast, pushing his small shuttle closer. There was no distress signal, no energy reading, but his gut told him something was inside. He activated the docking clause and pulled the pod into his hold. As the outer door sealed, Jake reached for his toolkit. The pod's door was locked, and the emergency panel was jammed. He pried it open with effort, sparks flying as it gave way. The door hissed, opened slowly, and cold air flowed out. Jake stepped back, unsure of what to expect. Inside, lying still, was a small alien girl. She was curled up, eyes closed, skin a pale shade of blue. Her silver hair was tangled, and her arms were covered in small bruises. She looked no older than 10. Jake didn't think twice. He lifted her gently and carried her to the medical bed. "Stay with me, kid," he whispered, checking her pulse. Faint, but steady. He gave her oxygen, injected a stabilizer, and wrapped her in thermal blankets. She didn't wake, but her breathing eased. "Who are you?" he asked softly, brushing dirt from her face, but she didn't reply. Only the low hum of the ship answered him. Jake sat beside her, watching her chest rise and fall. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Later, as he ate a protein bar, he checked the pod's data log. Most of it was corrupted. The only readable entry was a name, Renari. There was no family ID, no planet listed, just her name. And a code he couldn't understand. Suddenly, the girl stirred. Jake turned quickly as she opened her eyes. They were large, glowing faintly. Filled with fear, she sat up fast, looking around like a trapped animal. "Easy," Jake said, raising his hands. "You're safe now." She didn't understand. Her language was different, soft and musical. She spoke fast, but Jake couldn't make sense of it. Still, she didn't attack or run. Instead, her shoulders relaxed, just a little. She looked at him with confusion and hope. Over the next few hours, she stayed quiet, but watched him closely. When Jake handed her water, she took it. When he smiled, she gave a small nod. Bit by bit, trust began to form, even without words. Their silence spoke enough. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept hearing strange clicks on the comms, not voices, signals, encrypted and short. Someone was sending out a search pattern. He checked the direction it matched, the area where he found the pod. Someone was looking for Renari. He shut off his transponder and dimmed all lights. Whoever wanted her might not be friendly. She could be a hostage, a royal, or even a target. But Jake didn't care about her background. He only saw a scared little girl who needed help. The next day, Renari explored the ship. She touched every console, stared at every blinking light. She pointed at stars through the window and whispered things Jake couldn't understand. Then she touched her chest and said, "Renari." Jake smiled and pointed at himself. "Jake," she repeated. "Yek." Her smile was small, but real. Suddenly the alarm buzzed. A ship was nearby, heading straight for them. Jake rushed the controls. It was a patrol vessel unknown make, fast, and heavily armed. They weren't broadcasting ID. That meant trouble. He turned to Renari, who now looked terrified. She backed away, whispering something again and again. Jake knew what he had to do. He slammed the throttle and sent his ship into a sharp dive, heading toward an asteroid belt. He didn't know who was after her, or why, but he knew one thing. He wouldn't let them take her. Not now, not ever, not after everything she had already survived. The asteroid belt was thick. Rocks drifted in silence like floating bones of dead planets. Jake guided his ship carefully through the narrow spaces. The enemy vessel was still behind him, trying to catch up, but his smaller size gave him the edge. He ducked between two giant boulders and cut the engines. Darkness swallowed them. The Girl Renara clung to the wall of the control room. Her body trembled as her bright eyes stared at the stars beyond. Jake whispered, "It's okay. We lost them for now." But even as he said it, his stomach twisted. Who were they? And how did they find her so quickly? As silence returned, Jake activated the communication logs again. This time, he noticed something strange. A repeating sound, buried under other signals. Not random noise, a voice. It was quiet and mechanical. But the message repeated again and again in the alien language. He boosted the frequency and listened closer. Through static, one word became clear. Renari. He turned toward her. She looked frightened, but also ashamed. "Is this about you?" he asked gently. She didn't answer, but lowered her head and whispered something he couldn't understand. Then, slowly, she pointed at the screen and tapped her small fingers 3 times. Jake rewound the signal and replayed it. She nodded. Slowly. That signal wasn't a search beacon. It was a warning. Why would someone warn others about a little girl? Jake whispered to himself. Renari didn't look dangerous, but he was beginning to wonder if this wasn't just a rescue mission. Maybe it was something bigger. Later, while checking the food supply, Jake found Renari drawing on the wall. She had taken a piece of scrap metal and was sketching something, symbols, circles, and shapes that looked like stars. But at the center of it all was a creature, large and shadowy, with sharp wings. Jake asked, "Is that the one chasing you?" She nodded, her hand trembling slightly. Then she pointed at herself and made an X with her arms forbidden. Then she pointed at Jake and drew a circle around him, protected. It didn't make full sense, but one thing was clear. She was marked, and somehow he was now part of it. That night, while Renari slept in the corner wrapped in blankets, Jake received another signal. This one was different. It came in a human dialect. Text only. Return the subject. ORB destroyed. Last warning. Jake's heart pounded. Who were they? How did they speak Earth languages? He tapped into deep space channels and ran a search. The message was coming from the same coordinates as the patrol ship in known territory. Marked D-Class Zone, a no-go area for most civilian pilots. Jake had never entered it before, but now, it was calling him in. He looked back at Renari, who was still asleep, her tiny hands clutching the corner of his old coat. He couldn't abandon her. He'd seen the fear in her eyes, the way she flinched at loud sounds. She had been through something horrible, and whoever wanted her back wasn't trying to help her. They were trying to silence her. In the morning, Renari tried to speak. She repeated 3 words in his language, broken and slow. "Don't go back." Jake's chest tightened. Even she knew what was coming. He reached into his locker and pulled out an old necklace, a token from his father, an ancient compass from Earth. He placed it gently in her hands. "You're not going back," he whispered. "Not if I can help it." She looked at the compass and smiled faintly, then hugged it close. Just then, the ship's sensors blinked red. Multiple signatures approaching fast. Jake rushed to the cockpit, heart racing. 5 ships, same model as the last patrol craft, but this time, armed and ready. He fired up the engines, but before he could jump to hyperspace, a strange glow filled the room. The console froze, lights flickered, and Renari screamed from behind. Jake turned. She was floating, her body surrounded by a soft blue light. Symbols glowed on her arms and foreheads. She wasn't just a passenger. She was activating something. The ship's systems responded, doors locking, shields rising, and a new navigation path being drawn on the screen, a path to her home. Jake stared in shock. "Is this where you're from?" he asked. She nodded slowly, her voice calm now. "Home." But as they turned toward her world, the radio crackled again. This time, the voice was colder, deeper. "The test has begun, human. Let's see what choice you make." Jake felt a chill run through him. A test. What test? What had he gotten into? And why did it feel like he was being watched the entire time? Jake stood frozen in the cockpit, The voice still echoed in his head. The test has begun, human. He didn't know what it meant, but it wasn't just a threat anymore, it felt like a game, and he had already stepped into it without knowing. The rules. The ship followed a new course, one Jake never programmed. Coordinates lit up on the screen, leading far beyond any known human charts. He tried to override it, but the controls wouldn't respond. Renari sat calmly behind him, eyes glowing faintly. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was waiting. Is this your planet? Jake asked again. She didn't reply, but she didn't need to. The stars in front of them slowly shifted, revealing a massive glowing planet wrapped in blue clouds and golden rings. As they got closer, Jake saw huge spires reaching into orbit, and silver towers stretching above oceans. It was a homeworld, untouched by war, clean, rich, protected, and hidden. As soon as the ship entered the atmosphere, a bright beam pulled them down gently. No weapons fired, no warnings came. They were expected. The ship landed on a circular platform surrounded by guards in black and silver armor. Jake stepped out slowly, holding Renari's hand. She looked smaller now, more fragile under the twin suns, but the moment the guards saw her, they dropped to one knee. And Jake understood. She was royalty. One of the guards approached him, tall and expressionless. You will come with us, human, the guard said. Jake hesitated. Where's her family? What is this place? The guard didn't answer. Another figure walked forward, a woman in a long white robe, with gold markings on her forehead. Her voice was calm but heavy. You have passed the first threshold, human protector. Jake frowned. What threshold? I just saved her. The woman studied him. Yes, and you did it without knowing who she was, without reward, without orders. Jake looked around, confused. Why does that matter? She smiled faintly. Because it means your actions were true. Renari was taken inside by servants, her eyes never leaving Jake's. She looked back one last time and placed her small hand over her heart. Then she disappeared behind a silver door. Jake was led into a quiet chamber with glowing walls and no visible exits. The same woman returned with other advisors, judges. They formed a circle around him, and the lights dimmed. One of them spoke. We sent the child to the galaxy to see if humans had heart. Jake blinked. You what? The woman nodded. Renara's escape pod was no accident. She was sent out as a living test. Whoever saved her, protected her, and returned her would prove their worth. He felt a strange pressure in his chest. Like betrayal, you risked a child's life to test someone like me. She's not a tool, he said sharply, but the elders stayed calm. Do not mistake us, human. One of them said. She volunteered. She knew the danger. She chose to believe in your kind. Jake sat down, overwhelmed. He had nearly died, fought off hunters, and crossed into unknown territory for a test. Still, something inside him didn't regret it, because it meant Renari had trusted him. Then the doors opened again. This time, a different figure entered, taller, wearing dark robes, with sharp glowing eyes. It was the emissary. He did not kneel, did not speak softly. He stared at Jake and said, Now you must make your choice. Jake stood slowly. Choice. The emissary pointed to a glowing pillar, where a strange artifact rested. Touch it, and you will forget her, forget this place, and return to Earth, richer than ever, or, he paused, walk past it, and be bound to her fate. Jake stepped back. Bound how? The emissary's eyes narrowed. If you stay, you can never go back. You will become part of our bloodline, tied by oath and symbol. She is heir to the throne, and her heart now belongs to you. Jake felt the air thicken. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about a bond that began the moment he opened that pod. He looked at the artifact, glowing, tempting, easy. Then he remembered Renari, holding his coat, whispering, Don't go back, and he knew the answer. He turned his back to the pillar. I'm not leaving her, he said. I never was. The elders rose from their seats, not with anger, but with silent approval. The emissary nodded once. Then the second threshold has been passed. The deal is sealed. Jake didn't understand all their words, but he understood one thing clearly. He hadn't just saved Renari. He had been chosen by her. Jake sat in a quiet chamber of polished stone and glowing walls. His mind spun with everything the elders told him. It was a test, a path, a ritual. But to him, it had only been a simple choice: save a child. Now, everything was different. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was part of something bigger, older, and deeper than he understood. But something didn't sit right. The emissary said he had passed the second threshold. What came next? A soft knock echoed through the room. The silver door slid open, and a young alien servant walked in. She held something in her hands, small bundle wrapped in golden cloth. Without a word, she placed it gently on the table and stepped back. Jake looked at it, then slowly unwrapped it. Inside was Renari's pendant, the same one she wore around her neck since the day he found her. It shimmered with soft blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. There was also a folded note written in rough, imperfect English. Jake, if you read this, I had to go. I want to stay with you, but they said I must be made ready. They said I have to be strong before I stand beside you. But I left you this because you saved me. Not because of a test, but because you are kind. Please wait, Renari. Jake's hands tightened around the cloth. She was gone again, taken away. Just like that? No goodbye, no last smile. Just her pendant and those few broken words. He stood up and paced the room. What did they mean by made ready? Where did she go? He tapped his communicator, but no signal worked on this planet. He was cut off, alone, waiting without answers, outside the chamber. Guards still stood tall. Jake pushed the door open, ignoring their raised hands. I want to see her, he said firmly. One guard glanced at the other, then replied, She is in the Circle of Awakening. Jake frowned. What's that? A sacred place, the guard said. Only blood may enter. Jake's jaw clenched. I risked everything to bring her back. She asked me to stay. You said I passed your trial. So let me see her. The guards didn't argue. They simply turned and led him through the city. Every building shimmered like crystal, floating slightly above the ground. Aliens of all kinds stared at Jake as he walked by, some curious, some respectful, some fearful. They reached a large dome, carved into a mountainside. A gate stood before them, with a circle of glowing symbols. The guard motioned to Jake. Place your hand. Jake raised his palm and touched the circle. It glowed bright, then opened. The inside was filled with white mist and a humming sound that tickled the skin. Jake stepped through slowly. It wasn't just a place that felt alive. The path led to a small platform in the center. There, surrounded by symbols and hovering lights, stood a version of Renari he barely recognized. She wore royal armor, slim and silver. Her pendant floated above her chest, spinning slowly, and her eyes were come to calm for a child. Jake, she said softly. Her voice had changed. Deeper, more stable. He stepped forward. What is this? Awakening, she replied. It is our way to become who we are meant to be. I didn't want to leave you. Jake looked at her, heart heavy. You didn't leave, he said. You left me something to hold on to. I just didn't expect you to grow so fast. Renari smiled. Small and sad. I had to, she whispered. They won't let me stay with you unless I finish the ritual. They say a leader must be awakened. Jake shook his head slowly. I didn't come here for a throne or a ritual. I came for you, Renari. You were scared and alone, and I wasn't going to walk away from that. She stepped closer and placed her small hand on his. I know, she said, and that's why I chose you. I left the pendant with you, because it carries my will. If it glows, it means I am thinking of you. Jake smiled softly. The pendant on his chest pulsed again, brighter than before. Suddenly, the lights around them shifted. An old voice echoed from the mist. She is ready, it said. The third threshold awaits. Jake looked at Renari, confused. She looked up at him with a gentle smile. The final part, she whispered, it is not about me anymore, it is about us. The ground beneath them began to glow, symbols rising like fireflies. Jake didn't move. He took her hand firmly and held it tight. I didn't come this far to lose you again, he said. Whatever this next trial is, we face it together. Renari nodded, and in that moment, the mist cleared, revealing a wide circle of watchers, elders, leaders, even warriors, all eyes on them now. Jake had passed 2 thresholds, but what lay ahead? Would test something new? Ritual could prepare him for something Renari had left behind, her trust, her bond, and maybe her heart. The air around Jake shimmered as he stood at the edge of the ceremonial platform, his hands still held tightly to Renaris. The watchers around them didn't speak, but their eyes spoke of judgment, tradition, and something deeper, fear. A wide arch opened behind the crowd. Out of it came a tall figure in gold armor, his face hidden behind a glowing mask. The crowd parted, and whispers followed him. Jake leaned toward Renari and asked, "Who is that?" Her hand trembled slightly. "He is the gatekeeper," she said. "He decides who may cross into the forbidden airspace." Jake's eyebrows furrowed. "I thought the tests were over," but Renari shook her head slowly. "The final one is not a test of courage," she whispered. "It is a test of choice." The gatekeeper raised a long staff, and the ground beneath Jake and Renari lit up with 2 glowing paths. One curved toward a shining doorway filled with warm light, the other bent into a dark tunnel that seemed to breathe. The crowd took a step back as the black mist oozed from it. The gatekeeper's voice thundered, "One path leads to safety, the other to the sky's wound. No ruler walks blindly. No protector chooses selfishly." Jake stared down both paths. "I don't care about safety or wounds," he said firmly. "I only care about her." Renari turned her face toward him, her eyes wide. "You would follow me into the forbidden airspace." Jake nodded. "I followed you out of a wreck, through danger, through lies, and into a city that doesn't want me. I'm not stopping now." Renari's eyes welled with tears. "Then we go together," she whispered. The gatekeeper stepped aside, and the dark tunnel opened. The mist thickened, and the sky above the city twisted. Jake and Renari stepped forward, leaving the light behind them. As they entered the tunnel, the walls pulsed with energy. It was like walking through a living storm. The further they went, the heavier the air became. But Renari never let go of his hand. She led with quiet confidence, like she had walked this path in dreams. After what felt like hours, they reached the other side. Before them stretched a sky unlike any Jake had seen. Red clouds circled black stars, and a giant tear floated in the middle, like the sky had been slashed open. Ships circled the rip, and floating structures blinked with green and red lights. Alien technology hummed, and guards in strange armor watched silently from the towers. Renari's face grew cold. "This is the place where our history hides," she said. "This airspace was sealed long ago, after the fall of the Twin Empires. They say monsters still live in the shadows." Jake looked around. He didn't see monsters, he saw walls. Walls built to keep truths locked away. "Why are we here?" he asked. She replied, "Because I left something behind. A part of me that never healed." Suddenly, alarms screamed in the distance. A blast shook the ground. Red lights flashed across the floating platforms. Guards ran toward a chamber made of black crystal. Jake grabbed Renari. "What is happening?" But she looked straight ahead. "They didn't expect us to come. But the truth must be faced now." She ran toward the black crystal chamber, dragging Jake with her. As they approached, the doors shattered, and dark smoke poured out. From inside, a massive shadow emerged, 4 arms, glowing eyes, and jagged armor. It let out a screech that shook the sky. Jake pulled Renari back. "What is that?" she shouted. "That is what they buried. It was created during the War using royal DNA. They used me as a child to make it stronger. Jake's heart dropped. They experimented on you. She nodded, tears falling now. They called it protection, but they made it with rage. The creature roared again and turned its head toward her. Its eyes flashed and it stopped. It recognized her. The guards aimed their weapons but held fire. Renari stepped forward alone, her pendant glowing brightly. The monster lowered its arms slowly, confused by her presence. Jake reached for her. "Don't go near it," but she said, "I must. This is the darkness I was born from. If I don't face it, it will never end." She walked right up to the beast, placed her hand on its armor. It shook, letting out a sound like a child weeping. Jake couldn't believe what he saw. Then she turned to the watching guards, the towers, and the sky. "No more lies," she shouted. "No more cages. The forbidden truths must be known. This monster is my brother." Gasps echoed across the platforms. The silence was heavy, broken only by the beast's slow breath. Renari turned to Jake, voice soft. "This is what I left behind. Not just pain, but someone who waited in the dark for someone to love him." Jake stepped beside her, and the creature bowed its head. The air around them changed. The forbidden airspace wasn't cursed. It was forgotten. But now, someone had returned and brought the light back with her. The massive creature knelt beside Renari. Its jagged armor cracked, its glow fading like a dying flame. Jake stood behind her, heart pounding. He had fought pirates, crossed galaxies, escaped death, but nothing compared to this moment. A royal secret, a living weapon, and his girl who chose compassion over fear. The watchers in the sky towers didn't move, neither did the guards. No one expected her to claim the creature as family. No one dared speak. Renari placed her small hand on the monster's head again. "He was made for me," she said, "but not for me. They used my blood to create something they could control. But they didn't give him a name." Jake stepped forward. "Then give him one." She looked up at the creature with soft eyes. "I name you Aaron," she whispered. "You are not a beast anymore." The creature blinked slowly, then bowed lower. The wind stirred gently, like even the air had heard her. But then, a new sound broke the silence, a roar from the sky. A ship, massive and shaped like a spear, descended through the clouds. Its black hull shimmered, bearing the sigil of the High Elders. The council had come. The gatekeeper reappeared through a glowing portal. His voice thundered across the air. "You were not meant to enter this place, child of the blood. You have broken law and stirred ancient wounds." Renari stepped forward, her voice clear. "I have stirred the truth," she said. "You wanted silence. I chose to speak." Jake moved beside her, his jaw tight. "If you wanted her tested," he said, "then you should be proud." She passed everyone. The High Elders appeared on a floating platform, their faces unreadable, hidden behind golden masks. One of them raised a hand, and everything fell quiet. "You were never supposed to bond with the human," the Elder said. "You were supposed to return, take your place, and forget. But now you've let him into our darkest place." Jake looked at Renari, then back at the Elders. "What now?" he asked. "Are you going to punish her for having a heart?" The Elder's mask glowed brighter. "We are not cruel," he said. "We are careful. But what she has done, what you have done, must be answered with choice." Another platform rose between them. On it were two glowing paths, much like before, but this time, the stakes were far heavier. One path shimmered with starlight, freedom, return, and safety. The other was red binding, eternal, permanent. Renari turned to Jake, tears forming again. "They want us to choose," she whispered, "between being free or staying bound." Jake didn't hesitate. "I already chose," he said, back in the wreckage. "The day I found you. I don't want freedom if it means losing you." But then the Elder raised a final condition. "If you choose the red path," he said, "you become one of us. No return to Earth, no history, no name, no past, only her. In this world, Jake's heart stopped. He had never feared sacrifice, but now, they were asking for everything. His identity, his family, his home planet, all of it gone. Was Renari worth that? He looked at her again. She wasn't just a scared girl anymore. She was a leader, a voice of change, and she had chosen him above all else, even above her own safety. Jake took a deep breath and looked up at the stars above them. He saw no earth, no ship, no past, only her, standing with trembling hands and eyes full of hope. I may lose everything, he said softly, but I'll gain something more, a future that means something. He stepped toward the red path, but just before his foot touched it, Renari stopped him. No, she whispered, not like this. You've already given enough. She turned toward the elders, her voice rising. You said he had to choose, she said, but now I choose. I will step down from the throne, if that's what it takes to walk beside him freely. Gasps echoed through the sky towers. The gatekeeper lowered his staff. The elders murmured among themselves. The lead elder finally spoke again. Would you truly give up your crown for this human? Renari nodded, without pause. He is the only one who didn't see me as a crown, she said. He saw a frightened girl in a wreck and chose to save her. I will follow that heart, even into exile. There was silence, then laughter. Not cruel, but warm, deep, and unexpected. The elder removed his mask, revealing tired old eyes. Then perhaps the final test has truly been passed, he said, not by trial, but by love. The glowing paths vanished. The air grew calm. The creature Arn lifted his head and let out a peaceful sound, and Renari turned to Jake, smiling wide. You are always the right choice, she whispered. And for the first time in his life, Jake felt like he had finally belonged. The skies above the forbidden airspace turned soft and golden. The red clouds faded, the black stars dimmed. It felt as if the galaxy itself had exhaled. The storm was over. Jake stood beside Renari, his hand wrapped gently around hers. Arn, the once feared creature, now stood like a silent guardian behind them. No longer a weapon, no longer alone, and neither was Jake. The High Elder's words still echoed in the air. The final test has been passed, not by trial, but by love. Jake had thought this journey would end with a goodbye, but now, it was beginning with a choice. The elders stepped back as the wind shifted again. This time, soft music filled the air. Floating lights moved around them, like glowing petals caught in a gentle breeze. One by one, members of the crowd knelt, not out of fear, but out of respect. The gatekeeper approached and placed a small glowing emblem into Jake's hand. This is the sigil of binding, he said, not a chain, but a symbol. It means you are no longer a visitor. You are part of our blood. Jake looked down at the glowing emblem. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He had no crown, no title, no lineage. But they were giving him a place not as a ruler, but as one of them. He turned to Renari, who smiled, her eyes shining with pride. This means, she said softly, you're not walking behind me, you're walking beside me. That night, a great celebration was held across the floating cities. Ships lit up the skies. Fireworks colored the clouds. Renari walked at Jake's side wearing royal silks. But she had removed her crown, placing a flowered band on her head instead. Arn stood at the gates, not as a beast, but as a guardian of peace. Children approached him with no fear, and he lowered his great head so they could pet him. Jake stood, near the edge of the balcony, watching everything in awe. He never thought a broken salvager from Earth would one day stand in a palace on a distant world. He never thought he'd be part of something this big, something this real. Renari joined him quietly, her arms folded. They want to name this night after you, she said, teasing. Jake chuckled. Please don't. Let them name it after you. You're the reason this world didn't fall apart. She looked down, brushing her silver hair behind her ear. I was scared, she whispered, but you always stood beside me. I never had to ask. Jake turned to her. I didn't do it because of a test, he said. I did it because I saw someone who mattered. You mattered. She leaned her head against his shoulder, quiet for a moment. Then she said, they asked if I want to rule from the high citadel. Jake raised an eyebrow. Do you? She smiled softly. Only if you're there with me. He nodded slowly. Then let's rule. From wherever you feel free. Suddenly, a light hovered before them, one of the elders' messengers. It spoke gently. A new council is forming, a mix of the old and new. They request your presence. Human. Jake glanced at Renari, who grinned. Guess you're important now, she joked. He laughed. Guess I am, but only because of the alien girl who bit me the first time we met. She rolled her eyes, blushing slightly. That was for survival, she muttered. Jake grinned. Sure it was. They walked into the council chambers side by side, not as leader and guest, not as test and tester, but as partners, bonded by choice, not destiny. Their names were entered into the royal record together. Jake of Earth, and Renari, of the Starlit Line. Outside, the children danced under glowing trees. Arn watched with quiet joy, and in the skies above, Earth's position was marked on a new map, one that now included a path home. Jake stood at the edge of a new world, a future he never planned for, but one he would never trade. He had lost everything, and yet gained more than he could ever imagine. He saved a girl, returned her home, passed a trial he didn't know he was part of, and now, he was no longer just human, he was hers, and she was his whole universe.